edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. How's everybody doing this evening? And I'm just coming to you live, putting some things together here so I can talk to you intelligently as we discuss some of this baseball history that I want to talk about. Here, let me get a few more things I got to straighten out. I always have to straighten something out, so yeah, it seems like I'm going live sometime before I really get set up here, but I want to do that. Hey, I want to thank everybody who's been supporting me and joining me and been with this broadcast for so long. So let me give you a good smile. Anyway, I appreciate that. So anyway, I'm going to jump in here tonight and boy, I'm going to talk to you about baseball history. Now, today is the March 2nd, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. But if you've been joining me, you know that we use these facts from this day to have a broader conversation about men, events, cities, all of those type of activities as they relate to the African American baseball experience. So I certainly appreciate everybody who's been in support of that. And we're growing a network, guys. And my goal is to have 1,000 subscribers within 1 year. And I know that if I had some girls dancing in the background, guys, I'd probably have my 1,000 subscribers and then some a long time ago. But when I'm giving good positive information, it's just one of those kind of things, guys. People these days, they love being entertained, but not everyone is seeking knowledge. And so that's the kind of thing that I provide that's a little different than maybe some other things you've been trying to absorb in the social media world. So I am not going to waste a lot of time of your time this evening, but I am going to jump in here and give you some facts. And I'm going to start with a guy by the name of John W. Patterson. And I don't know if you know him. He was born on this date. Believe it or not, March the 2nd, 1872. And he passed away in 1940. Interesting thing is I was putting some things together on him many years ago. I noticed that he died at 68 years old. And from complications, he had a rupture or something like that. He was a policeman in Battle Creek, Michigan. And he was trying to apprehend someone who had escaped from the local Veterans Hospital. And through that, they had an operation for him. He didn't survive, and he passed away. But he had been a police officer in Battle Creek from 1908 to 1940. And he was just a great baseball player before then, that played a lot of different places and spaces. And so I was one who helped to put him on the map. And let me tell you how I did this. Years ago, I went to Battle Creek and I spent probably a week there, sponsored by the Kellogg Foundation. W.K. Kellogg, you probably heard of him. He's the one that invented the cornflake cereal. And so I stayed at the home. Actually, they took his home and they moved it. They picked up the house, moved it, put it down by the river there in Battle Creek. And whenever you spoke there for the Kellogg Foundation, you actually slept in W.K. Kellogg's room. Can you believe that? Guys, you're listening to somebody who actually slept in W.K. Kellogg's bedroom, right? So, yeah, hey, I can't make this stuff up, guys. This has been a journey that just is beyond my expectations, guys. And I can tell you, people can talk about the great job they've had in baseball and things like that. I've never even had a job in baseball as far as I'm concerned. I've had a passion, and people you've never actually put me on their payroll. I did work for a little while as assistant director of public relations for the Kansas City Royals, but man, that was back in 1990 when I left there. So all these events that I've experienced through the years, and what I'm going to tell you about through Pat Patterson. By the way, somebody comes in, Roger Rodriguez. Hello there, Roger. Let me know where you're joining from, Roger. Appreciate that. If you like what I'm doing here, by all means, if you can't stay all for a long time, just hit that subscribe button and come on back sometime and catch me, right? Somebody says, I says, believe in yourself. That's interesting. Somebody said, how are you? I'm doing great. So how are you guys doing? Let me know where you're joining from. So I'm going to take you on this ride that I went through Battle Creek, Michigan. Let me tell you about John W. Patterson. All right. Now his nickname was Pat Patterson, and he played for many major teams in black baseball from 1893 to 1907. Just give you an example, he played for the Patriots Giants. And they had a couple of really remarkable teams. He played for the Columbia Giants. He was actually manager in 1899. And man, I love that team because that team would put up a record that was just incredible. Uh, and he played for the Cuban X Giants, and he even played actually a couple of games at the end of the year for the 1905 Philadelphia Giants. And if you've been following me, you know I wrote an entire book about that season. Of course, he only played 2 games for them because he played for the Cuban X Giants during the regular season. By the way, the Cuban X Giants that year, they beat the Brooklyn Dodgers with their team intact. They played a game in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and they beat the Brooklyn Dodgers, and he was a part of that team. He was just a sensational baseball player. Now, Wikipedia says that he was born in Omaha, Nebraska. And I was doing some research years ago, and I just happen to have these notes. And I pulled my Patterson file. Guys, I have some files that are just simply incredible that I've been sitting on and working with for years. And this was the file here. And I put down he was born March 2nd, and I put the 1872, but I put, instead of Omaha, Nebraska, I put maybe Mississippi. And so let me explain that. During this time, he lived in Omaha, Nebraska. Of course, he played for the Lincoln Giants in 1890. However, I don't think he started off in Lincoln. I think he started off in Starkville, Mississippi. And the reason I have that, there's another article that I pulled many years ago. Let me see if I can find it here. Because I have to tell you, I have a very large file. This is a large file on nothing but him. And you would find it amazing because if you look online, you don't find the kind of stuff. How about this one? That's a picture of him right there. Is a little kid. How about that? So I have some things that definitely make me feel that he wasn't born in Battle Creek. He was born in Starkville, Mississippi. Now, you know, Starkville, Mississippi is the home of another famous baseball player. His name is James Cool Papa Bell, who came from Starkville, Mississippi. Actually, I know a couple of ball players who did. But I did find an article in 1909, and this came in the Indianapolis Freeman, and it did say that Pat Patterson, they said patrolman, and this is a letter sent to the Indianapolis Freeman. He said, received a message Thursday, January 4th, this is from 1909, that his mother was dying in her home in Starkville, Mississippi. How about that? Mr. Patterson left immediately for his home. Now notice that. They didn't say Omaha, they said for his home. All right, so that's why I'm thinking Mississippi, not Omaha, Nebraska, which is being repeated over and over again, right? And they said he has not seen his mother in 12 years. So when he left there, he didn't get back, right? And then it says, nor his father in 24 years. They're both in Starkville, Mississippi. Now, what's interesting is during this time, people weren't migrating from the north, going to the south. It was the opposite way around. They were leaving the south, coming to the north, right? So anyway, somebody says they don't know much about baseball. Stick with me. I'll teach you a lot, right? And I'll teach you about the people. And you know, if you have questions, just let me know. I'll answer those questions. So anyway, and so it goes in it and it says, let's see if there's anything else in here. Okay, that is the most important part, right? And so through the years, I was able to do some unique things. For instance, in 1990, when I went to Battle Creek, his son had just passed away, but his son's wife was still living. And so I was able to interview her. And so that connected me right to the family. Now, if you ever go to my book, The Negro Baseball Leagues, a Photographic History, that came out in 1992. Now, keep in mind, I finished publishing that or writing that book about 1988. I couldn't get anyone to publish it. When it actually came out in 1992, hit the public, it won the best baseball book of the year, hands down. There was probably 120 baseball books that came out that year. That book won and eclipsed everyone. And I remember Bill James writing about it years later. He said he picked it as one of his top 5 baseball books of the 1990s. Just imagine that. So it was a good book, but in there I really highlight and bring Pat Patterson to life. And but there are pictures I never use. For instance, here's one right here. Pat Patterson is a police officer. Never use that one. I never use this one. Pat Patterson is an umpire. Never use that one. There's Pat Patterson on the streets of Battle Creek in his police uniform. Back then, if you were a police officer, they didn't have electric lights. You just had a gold sign. You turn it around and it was stopped. And they had police officers manually doing that. And so I was able to interview his family and put a few things together. So I will tell you this: he was just a great baseball player. Pat Patterson played with all the greats, from the turn of the century. Man, believe me, Pat Patterson was one of those. And I had the honor of going to Battle Creek, Michigan. I went to the same cemetery where he is buried, and had the honor of going there. And in that same cemetery, you ever heard of Sojourner Truth? I visited her grave in that same cemetery. And then I went by W.K. Kellogg's grave. He had a little small monument, and his famous slogan was, "I invest my money into people." And so I went by W.K. Kellogg's. And then guess what? I left there, and guess not too far from W.K. Kellogg was a guy named C.W. Post. You probably heard of him, Post Cereals, right? And so, guys, this is stuff that I've been able to enjoy in my lifetime. And like I said, Pat Patterson is just one of those people. And like I said, I was there in Battle Creek for about a week. And so I accumulated all this information on Pat Patterson. And there's more to this story than I'm ever telling. And I do have more photographs that I've never released of Pat Patterson. And so, yeah. And I'm looking at here something they're talking about Pat Patterson, Battle Creek Police Department. He was born, once again, it says March 2nd, 1872, Omaha, Nebraska. But it said he was married February the 8th, 1892 in Starksville, Mississippi, right? So Mississippi is in there pretty heavy. His father was William Patterson. His mother was Agnes Kennard Patterson. And his wife, he married Anna B. Pfeiffer, yeah. She was born in Crawford, Mississippi, and she died 2 years after he passed away. And he passed away at age 68, and she passed away 2 years later in Battle Creek, Michigan on April the 9th, right? And they attended Second Baptist Church right there in Battle Creek. I don't know if that's still there. I wasn't there on a Sunday, so sometime when I'm in town, if I'm there on a Sunday, I will visit some of these churches, but I didn't get a chance to go there. So that is the book on Pat Patterson. So guys, this is information you won't get very much related to this player anywhere else, right? And what you heard today, guys, is probably more than if you go to Wikipedia and all the rest of the Negro League sites than you'll get anywhere, right? So I'm just trying to not brag or boast, but I'm just stating a fact. So, you know, it might be hard for some people to take. They say, well, who is this guy? I've never heard of him before. And maybe you haven't heard of me, but go pick up a book, crack a book, a baseball book on the Negro Leagues, and you will certainly find me, because I'm out there, right? Still doing this history. So somebody said it's getting late where I live, so I'm going to go for now. That's all right, guys. I just appreciate you just being here for the time you were here. And once again, you can always catch my broadcast commercial free for now. Commercial free. Did you get that? For now. And so you could lie in the bed, turn it on, and go to sleep by it. Guys, you don't have to worry about a commercial coming in there, all right? So let me go to another one, okay? Because I just basically talked 14 minutes on Pat Patterson. And so, but there's lots of information and history there with Pat Patterson. And believe me, I didn't even crack the surface on Pat Patterson. So let's go to another one. March 2nd, 1906, D.M. Shively, president of the Western Association, visited Topeka. He was going there to sign up as umpire. So him and a guy named Duff Cooley went to the major leagues, and he was in town, And so they went over to check on the park because they were having some work done on a new dressing room. So they went over to check it out, right? So when they arrived there, they found Fred Abbott, who was the manager of the Topeka team, right? And then they also found the catcher of the Topeka team. Now, this is in March, early March, and a black player by the name of Topeka Jack Johnson on the field working out, right? So you got two white guys and one black guy working out. People don't tell you that these interactions took place, and they don't give it to you in real time. So they were all three of these guys, professional players working out, right? So Dick Cooley sees them having all this fun, and the weather's a nice day. So he picks up a bat and starts hitting balls to them. They're working out, right? And then the president of the league, D.M. Shirley, he said, hey, I got to get a little bit of this action too, because he was a former baseball player. He took off his coat and got in some of the action. And later on, the Topeka Capital, Daily Capital, said that Cooley was greatly surprised by Johnson's work on the diamond. In other words, he's looking at this guy and looking at his ability to play and knowing that he can never sign this guy because this is a very dark-skinned black guy. You're not going to slide him into the league, right? So anyway, he's looking at Johnson. He didn't know that Johnson had played for the Chicago Unions in 1905 and a shortstop. This guy was a heavyweight boxer. So he's at least 6'1", 6'2", somewhere in there, playing shortstop. Guys, you don't see shortstops with that kind of height and things like that in abundance in the major leagues and the National and American League to way later, maybe in the 70s. But back then, they already had this happening in the Negro professional ranks, right? So Jack Johnson and Cooley's looking at this guy, and Cooley's already in the American National League, and so he knows talent when he sees it, but he could never sign Jack Johnson. And he was just so surprised by the way the big fella plays shortstop. Yeah, Topeka Jack Johnson. Boy, I'll tell you, if he thought he was impressive as a baseball player, he should have saw him box. Yeah, this guy fought the real Jack Johnson, and he also fought Sam Langford. Yeah, the Boston Tar Baby, who was just a man. This guy was sensational. Sam Langford he probably could have beat Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson didn't want to fight him after he got his title, though. So, all right. So that happened in Topeka, Kansas, March 2nd, 1906. I'll give you one more, and then I'll jump out of here. March 2nd, 1909. George Franklin Giles, first baseman, later on for the Kansas City Monarchs. How about this, the Kansas City Royals? He played for them in 1926, and he also played with the St. Louis Stars. And he was born in Junction City, Kansas. And of course, he was a rookie with the Kansas City Monarchs in 1927. He actually tried out for them in 1926, and they said, well, we got a first baseman. Maybe he's not ready because he's a young kid, right? He's born in 1909, and then in 1926, he's still a teenager. He's trying out for the Kansas City Monarchs. So they formed him out to a touring team called the Kansas City Royals. And Big Piney, what was Piney's name? I'm trying to think. There's a jazz song about Piney Brown. I can't think of the name. I think it was called Piney Brown's Blues, maybe. Somebody look that up and maybe post that. I know Bob Poet and Will they are so good at picking this kind of information up. And so anyway, Bob or Will, if you happen to picked up Piney Brown's Blues, right? But anyway, he played for Piney Brown's team. Piney was kind of like a gangster around Kansas City, but he was also a pretty good tennis player as well. I can tell you a lot of stuff about Kansas City, guys. So anyway, George, he ended up playing also with the Gilkerson Union Giants. I remember George, who I knew very well, interviewed him many times, have lots of letters from him. I probably have 15, 20 letters from George Giles in my possession right now. But we wrote back and forth quite a bit, and I talked to him on the phone numerous times because he helped me win that award, the Casey Award, with my book back in 1992. So that's Joe Turner. Okay, all right. See, somebody's in here. I love you guys. That's response. Piney Brown's Blues. Yeah, but he was actually connected to the Kansas City Royals. Now keep in mind, when the Kansas City Royals baseball team, the current American League team, started their team, the reason they got that name because they had a contest. And so people could submit any name they wanted to. And so they got the name Kansas City Royals and they thought it was a one of a kind, an original name, never knowing that black teams have been using that name since the 1920s. And originally Ben Powell had the Kansas City Royals, but Piney Woods, or I just had his name, Piney Brown. He actually funded that team, and they used money from the policy because they were all involved with what they called the policy, which was the legalized gambling, kind of like the numbers, or it's the lottery now today, right? And so they would funnel money from that and sponsor baseball teams, right? And so that's how George Giles got his start, and he ended up being a pretty good one. He finished up in 1939 with the Kansas City Monarchs second team, but he was also out east with the Homestead Grays, and I played with the Brooklyn Brooklyn. Let's see, what is that? Um, the Brooklyn team. I'm trying to think. Brooklyn Eagles. Brooklyn Eagles. They end up being the Newark Eagles. So that was a team that Abe Manley and Effa Manley had there. So yeah, George Giles. And when George Giles was there, actually Ben Taylor was the manager, and Ben wasn't getting the job done, and so they fired Ben Taylor, and George Giles became the manager for a short period there. So yeah, so Piney Brown's Blues. Hey, I'm gonna look that one up today. I appreciate that. Who's that? Who's that? Who did that? Is that Leonard? Let's see. I'm not sure you have something Pryor. I can't. Lanier Pryor, maybe. I'm gonna think that's what it is. Yeah. So, but I appreciate you digging like that. All right. So anyway, guys, maybe he's a jazz fan because I sure am, and so yeah. So that's George Giles, and I'm gonna give you one more since I got 22 minutes. Let me give you one more. All right. This is gonna go as fast as I can to get to the end of this. Okay, March 2nd, 1920. African American manager of the 10 leading southern cities met in Atlanta, Georgia for the purpose of forming a Negro Southern League. And according to the Chattanooga News, the following men have assembled, and that included W.M. Brooks and Monroe D. Young of Knoxville, Tennessee, Mal Carter and Henry Brinson of Chattanooga, Tennessee, J.W. White and Marshall Garrett of Nashville, Tennessee, Dr. O.M. Thompson and J.R. Kennedy of Greenville, South Carolina, F.M. Perdue and L.L. Barber of Birmingham, Alabama, Dan Brown of Pensacola, Florida, Henry Hannon of Montgomery, Alabama, and I can't talk, Alabama, and Godfrey Williams of Jacksonville, Florida, and Fred Schofield of New Orleans, Louisiana. And what's interesting about looking at that list, guys, I think that I have presented in every single one of those towns, except I've never presented in Jacksonville. Of course, been to Montgomery, been to New Orleans numerous times. Of course, been to Nashville many times. Let me give you one. I'm gonna give you one. Greenville, South Carolina. This is my last thing for today. I'm a musician, right? And so back when I was traveling playing funk music, we were on the Chitlin circuit, guys, back in the 70s, and we played in Greenville, South Carolina, at a place called the Ghana Club. The Ghana Club, and we were the opening act, and the main event for that night, or the main act that night, was the Dynamic Superiors, who were on the Motown label. And so we opened for them at the Ghana Club in Greenville, South Carolina, back in, I want to say, man, that had to be like 1970, maybe 76, maybe 76 or 75. And of course, the Dynamic Superiors had a song called Shoe Shoe Shine. Used to cost a dime. A penny would buy you plenty. A nickel was a fare to take you anywhere. And troubles, we didn't have many. Hey, and man, I had to listen to that song because we opened up for them in different places. But we definitely opened up for them in Greenville, South Carolina, back in the 70s. And so great memories of my youth. And so when I look at some of these cities, if I hadn't been there as a baseball historian, which many of them I have, I've been there as a musician, and so that's a part of my legacy. And if you want to hear me play, I'm not doing anything very serious on the playing that I put on my YouTube here, but I do have some tracks of me playing like taps at ball players, grave sites, and then I play "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." A lot of time when I speak, and people are just surprised when I show up and start playing. Actually, I'll give you one more. I was somewhere in a small town in Kansas, and uh, and so I got my trumpet out. I'm doing a presentation, and I play "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." And so after I finish, I'm there and I'm signing books, and the guy came up to buy a book, and he said, "Man," he said, "I could tell by your playing." He said, "I know you've been playing somewhere." He said, "I could tell by your tone and everything, how the way you approach the horn." He said, "I know you played somewhere." I said, "Yeah, I did play. I used to be on the chitlin circuit and traveling around." And he said, "I did too." He said, "I played professionally too." I said, "Oh yeah, who'd you play for?" And he said, "I played for Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders." I'm saying, man, how many people know about Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders? But he came to me, and of course, I knew who they were. Yeah, Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders. And this guy was out of Florida. I said, "Well, what are you doing in the middle of Kansas?" And he was working for an organization that helps to exonerate people who have been falsely imprisoned for crimes they did not commit, and that's what he was doing in the state of Kansas, out in the middle of Kansas. I'm in a little small place, and the place is so small that the biggest place that they had where you could speak, and it had a lot of crowd that day. It was the church. It was a local church, and that's why I spoke at this church. And this guy came and we had a wonderful conversation. But he was with Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders. Now I'm gonna tell you what. This is Phil Dixon's This Day in Black Baseball History, and you thought I was just going to talk about some events that just happened on this day. Man, we just went all over the place. We talked about Piney Brown's Blues and opening for the Dynamic Superiors, and then we covered Pat Patterson for about 14 minutes, guys. This is the kind of broadcast that I would look for if I'm looking for something different, right? So I'm glad you came here, and yeah, and I want to thank everybody for participating. And somebody said, "What about Fleetwood Walker?" Yeah, I've been to his hometown too, out Mount Pleasant. There, I was speaking out. Where was I? I was speaking that night. I think I spoke in Wheeling, West Virginia, and then I went across the river to Ohio, and I spoke in the town that Bill Mazeroski came from. And then while I was there, one of the teachers said, "Hey, how'd you like to go to where um, Fleetwood Walker's home was?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to go." So they had to wind up through the hills. I'm glad that he was driving because I couldn't have found it. I didn't know if the GPS even went up in those hills like that. But he took me up there, and there was a big sign, and I took a picture right by that sign, and it was right across from the Quaker church, and where his house was, and I'm sure they didn't have air conditioning or whatever, but they could open up the window and you could hear preaching from the Quaker church. And the Quakers did not believe in slavery. So it's really interesting. Yeah, Moses Fleetwood Walker. I definitely know a lot about him, and I have to talk about him on some specific day, something that's going to relate to him, and then we'll use that to bounce off and see where it takes us, right? So thank you guys. If you like what's going on here, by all means subscribe, guys. We're just scratching every day to get to right now to get to 700. So we're scratching to get to 700, but we're going to scratch our way all the way from here on till we get to 1,000. And guys, believe me, we'll keep scratching after we get to 1,000, right? Because there are a lot of people out there who enjoy baseball, who enjoy sports, but they don't know that I exist. They don't have any idea that you can get this kind of information and this kind of support if you're working on a project especially in your town wherever you come from. So who would thought that I would be talking about Greenville, South Carolina tonight? I didn't. So or Junction City, Kansas. I knew I was going to talk about George Giles. So we went from Battle Creek to Junction City, Kansas, and guys, it just goes on and on and on. So thank you guys. I want to let you know that I appreciate you, first of all. And I will come back and we'll do it again tomorrow. Got some great things. Every day is a different day. But man, boy, you guys are making me pour out knowledge that I've been storing and files that I've been filed away that I haven't pulled out for years. But you're making me pull them out and talking to you with history that you cannot. Literally, you can listen to 100 guys talk on the Negro Leagues and you won't get this kind of information. I guarantee you. So if you like that kind of information, you appreciate it. You appreciate hard work, dedication, and someone who has a passion, who loves this. And guess what? I don't do it for a job because my passion has carried me so far that you can't hire me, you can't fire me because I just don't know how to stop. All right. So thank you guys. It's been my pleasure again tonight to talk about the Negro Baseball League. So this has been Phil Dixon's March 2nd, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Have a nice evening, guys. We'll see you real soon. Bye.